For the last week, I've read countless comments from Christians who said that their faith was rocked by listening to Billy Carsons' claims about the Bible and Christianity. And his interviews lately seem to consistently be getting millions of views. But although I can understand why he sounds persuasive, if you take the time to look into his claims, you'll see that in no way should his arguments be convincing. So let's talk about what's wrong with his arguments, why claims like his shouldn't bother your faith, and what I think might be the real reason he goes after Christianity so much. So similar to Terrence Howard, Billy prides himself on being an exceptional source of information.
Guess what, guys? I'm one of the foremost world leader in the knowledge on ancient texts and tablets, scriptures, papyruses, and cylinders.
And it's because of...
Let me pause right there. Yes, completely right. Thank you very much to subscriber for suggesting this video. I'm talking really quickly because I just want to get on with the video. But he's been blowing up, man, rocking a ton of people's faiths. So if you're a Christian, you've come across his content, you might start believing in Thoth. And I was just saying, this is demonic. I've done a couple of videos where I'm like, something ain't right, but he's very smooth his words. Let's carry on.
That people find his arguments against Jesus and Christianity to be persuasive since they believe him to be an expert on ancient texts. But let's see what the smallest bit of investigation does to his claims. Let's start with one of his claims about Jesus that you may have heard before.
In Harvard Library, there is a book of Jesus' wife at the Harvard Seminary School. And they found that about 8 years ago.
Jesus' wife is the Mary Magdalene?
Yeah, which means he probably had kids, and his Merovingian bloodline is still probably walking the land till this very day. Wow. Yeah.
So for someone who claims to be one of the world's leading experts on ancient texts, this is a pretty shocking claim. When he claims that they found a book that says that Jesus had a wife, of course, he's wrong.
You can look it up.
It wasn't at all a book that they found. What they found was a small fragment, this one right here. This is a tiny piece of papyrus that has a small inscription on it that says, Jesus said to them, my wife. And that's what he's basing his claim off of. But the only problem is, as Billy has to know, not only was it not a book that was found, the fragment was also found to be a forgery from someone who wrote that inscription on an old piece of papyrus. You can't...
Oh my goodness me. That's why, go subscribe to What Do You Mean channel right now. Because things like this are needed. Because I've come across that interview and I was like, what? Oh, wonderful.
Even Google Jesus' wife without seeing tons of articles on it. Harvard was initially fooled into thinking that it was legit, only to later retract their claims after proving that it was a forgery. So his claim is quite literally fiction, not history.
That's in, what was that great book, the Dan Brown book, the Da Vinci Code?
Da Vinci Code, yeah.
Yes.
So,
seeing himself as an authority on ancient texts, Billy also says that there's several mistranslations in the Bible. And here he says that he found a big one.
Meaning of certain
I'll give you one big translation that's off, is they say, well, Jesus was crucified.
Whoa.
Well, that doesn't exist in the Sinai Bible.
What happened?
It doesn't exist in the book of Barnabas, but they left that out of the Bible on purpose, by accident.
So how did they kill him?
They didn't kill him.
Billy boy, oh Billy.
Now, if you've spent any time looking at the historical facts about Jesus, then you'll immediately know that he's wrong here.
Look it up.
Not only is the crucifixion of Jesus one of the most established facts in ancient history, according to even atheist scholars and historians, but when he cites things like the Sinai Bible or the Book of Barnabas, it makes it difficult to believe that he's not just using these words for the purpose of sounding sophisticated. When he mentions the Book of Barnabas, this is a pseudepigraphical gospel which was written in the late Middle Ages, so anywhere from 1300 to 1500 AD. So it's no wonder why it wasn't included in the Bible, because it was over 1,000 years late. And so you might say, well, maybe he misspoke and he's really referring to the Epistle of Barnabas, which would be a much stronger claim since it was found alongside of the Sinai Bible and dated around the 4th century. But it would still be false since the manuscripts of the Epistle included the Gospels, meaning that it included the crucifixion. So once again, I'm really hesitant to believe Billy when he says,
I'm one of the foremost world leader in the knowledge on ancient texts.
He also quotes the Bible as saying this.
The Ark of the Covenant is something that has so much radiation that you had to have on specific type of clothing, which is well described even in the Bible. Rubber boots. If somebody didn't have it on in the Bible and they touched the Ark, they would become very sick. Their hair would fall out, their nose would bleed, their eyes would bleed, their fingernails would fall off.
Oh, Billy.
But of course, that isn't what the Bible says at all. The Bible says nothing about wearing rubber boots, nor does it mention any of the other things that he describes. It says nothing about them getting sick, their hair falling out, or their eyes and skin melting away. It only says that the anger of the Lord burned against the person that touched the ark. Billy seems to be getting this from the story about the Ark of the Covenant found in Indiana Jones, not the Bible. But Billy
This
also
guy's a
tells us
liar.
that this was all proven by science.
They recreated this at a university in America.
Really? What university created this?
Google it. I can't remember the name of the university, but you can look it up.
But when you look it up, for some strange reason, you can't find a recreation of this scenario at a university, which, as we'll come to find, is a bit of a theme for a lot of Billy's claims. Billy also continuously refers to obscure documents to prove that the Bible is wrong. Documents such as the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. But as soon as you start to do any research here...
So earlier in the video, you heard me mentioning Thoth, and some people even in my comment section was like, no, he's right. Ronnie, look it up. Like, Thoth is actually Jesus, or I don't know. I was like, well, this guy's on some other stuff.
You'll find that not only do these alleged tablets not predate the Bible, but you won't find these tablets in a museum, and Billy won't ever show us these tablets because they simply don't exist.
Can't remember the name of the university, but you can look it up.
There's literally no evidence that these tablets exist, and there's no evidence that anything referring to them possibly could predate Jesus. The first we learned about these so-called tablets was only about 100 years ago, when a guy named Maurice Thuril claimed to find these tablets without showing them to anyone, translated them in secret, and strangely wasn't able to provide any evidence that he actually found these tablets. Not to mention, Billy claims that these tablets were written over 3,600 years ago. To explain why this is so ridiculous is because the oldest writings that we have are at best 6,000 years old. So to believe that one guy single-handedly translated them by himself in secret from a written language that has to be over 30,000 years older than the oldest written language that we're aware of, that requires a really strong suspension of skepticism. But every now and then, Billy will actually reference the Bible, which is great, but unfortunately, he seems to get it wrong when he says stuff like this.
In the New Testament, Jesus says, honor your slave master. Now, why would we want to honor a slave master? As you would honor me, he says. Do you think Jesus really would say something like that? I don't.
Good question. Why would Jesus say something like that? Well, the truth is, he didn't, which is why you won't find a verse of Jesus saying it if you try to Google it.
Look it up.
The verse that Billy's referring to, and still misquoted, isn't from Jesus at all, but instead it's a verse from Paul in Ephesians 6. And I think I'm being fair when I say that Billy likely hasn't ever read the verse, but only heard about it from others, because if he did, then he would also know what Paul was trying to do in that passage. Paul wasn't trying to start a revolution, but instead he was addressing the established common households at that time, and was telling Christians how they should live in the situations that they were already in. This is why Paul starts with addressing the children, then the fathers, then the slave, and then the slave masters, who, by the way, he tells to treat their servants with respect and fear and not to threaten them, which is a far cry from the implication that Billy was trying to leave people with. But when he says things like this, it sounds persuasive because we often impose our knowledge of American slavery onto the context of the Bible, not realizing the difference. I've covered this topic at length extensively in other videos that you can find on this channel if you want to learn more. But even though Billy claims to be an expert in Hebrew, it's clear that he literally doesn't understand even the most basic Hebrew when he says things like this.
What do you think about the Bible?
Well, the Bible has a lot of good information in it. If you can apply some of the information, it can really change your life. It can really put you on the right path. But it also has some information in it that's detrimental to people as well.
Detrimental? Okay, that's a pretty strong claim. Like what?
Detrimental to people as well. You have to have discernment with what you're reading in the book, in the Bible. In the Bible, where you see the word God everywhere, that's a mistranslation by accident on purpose. The original word is God's with an S. It's always with an S. When you back engineer the actual word, the translations, you find out it's God's, not God singular. Elohim is also a plural term. It's not a singular term.
All right, not only would it not be detrimental to society if Billy was right about this point, but he's also exactly wrong.
Look it up.
Now, to be fair, there's more legitimacy in his second claim that Elohim is plural, since Elohim is a concretized abstract plural, which just means that it's a word that can be used as plural or singular, like how the English word sheep.
I just want to say, may God bless this guy, because this amount of research is absolutely insane. May God truly bless you. What do you mean indeed? Let's play.
Can refer to one sheep or multiple
Smash
sheep.
the like
The reason
button.
why we know it's singular is because the verbs in the Hebrew are also singular. But when he says that God, which is El in Hebrew, is plural, he's wrong. I mean, again, just Google it.
You can look it up.
Anyone who knows literally anything about Hebrew translation will tell you the same thing. There's absolutely nothing in the Hebrew manuscripts that would support his strong claim, this claim that he bases his entire arguments off of. He uses claims like this in support of other wild views that he has, such as the belief that Jesus was an alien. And when he brings in science, it doesn't seem that he does much better.
To get us to take orders from them, they inserted something called a worship gene, which was just discovered recently, that human beings have a gene inside of them that can be turned on and turned off.
It can be turned off in a laboratory setting. It can also be turned off with a magnetic field around your head. And when it's off, you don't want to worship anything outside of yourself. You look inside, and when it's on, you look to get something from the outside. So this is incredible.
Now, as far as I know, he never claimed to be an expert on science, and there's a good reason for that, because that claim doesn't even make sense.
People can listen to what I'm saying, and they can go look all of it up.
If you do a Google search for the discovery of the worship gene, then you can probably guess by now what you'll find. Absolutely nothing. And if you know anything about genes, then you don't even need to Google it. Every gene is found in every cell of the human body, so you can't just turn them on and off like that, especially with something like a magnet. Not only can complex human behaviors not be simply correlated with a single gene, but how on earth can a magnetic field be so precise as to isolate one single part of each human cell out of 36 trillion of them? The claim simply doesn't make sense. All right, now here's the thing. The problem with Billy's claims is that he seems to use a lot of buzzwords that he doesn't seem to understand as a way to give support to his claims. Even when it comes to non-Christian claims, we see him do this.
I don't believe we're even from Earth, to be quite honest with you. Our cycadic rhythm doesn't even match Earth's rotation on its axis. We're slightly off. It's actually better tuned to Mars' orbit on its rotation on its own axis than
What do
it
you
is
mean?
Earth.
How's that work?
The circadian rhythm of a human body, the wake and sleep cycle, is actually more tuned to Mars' rotation on its own axis, a Mars day versus an Earth day.
The only problem is you can't find the term circadic rhythm on Google because it isn't even a thing.
Go look all of it up.
What he's trying to say is circadian rhythm, but once again, he's wrong. Circadian rhythms are basically just referring to the physical, mental, and behavior changes that we go through in a 24-hour day, which, counter to what Billy says, is perfectly suited for humans. And if you just
look it up,
you realize that there's a mutation in about 1% of humans whose cycle includes another half of an hour. So in other words, their cycle is about 24 and a half hours, making them more fit for Mars' circadian rhythm. So by now we can see that he gets facts wrong often, but he's still persuasive to people because of how confidently he asserts things without really knowing what he's talking about. I mean, if this doesn't convince you, then I don't know what will.
Yeah, top right, B. Okay, you see that where his hand is? Now move to the left going down slowly. See that? See how that? See that? Go back up again. See that? Oh, where his hand is over right now? It looks like obfuscation. Sometimes you can take these images and put them into a Photoshop and take away the contrast, and all of a sudden structures pop right out. But right above that, you see those shadows of those pyramid structures?
Right above that.
Yeah, you see those pyramids? You can see this dark shadow.
I see two lines.
Okay.
I see the arrow that's pointing to that one straight line, and then I see what looks like two superimposed arrows.
Okay, do you see?
Yeah, those things.
Okay, yeah.
Those are superimposed, right? Like
no, those are shadows.
But look, those are the same things that are in the bottom. Aren't they just pointing at something? Aren't those pointers?
I think they may be highlighting something.
Right, I think it's a cursor mark or something.
Yeah. So he believed that he was showing Rogan pyramid shadows on the moon, but in reality, they were really just markers that people put into the picture to highlight things. And for someone who literally claims to be the best in the world at this, I'm not sure how he can't tell the difference between a marker and an alleged moon pyramid. Based on elementary mistakes like this, if I was Joe, I would be incredibly skeptical at whatever else he says is evidence for his claims. So when it comes to Christians being bothered by his claims, here's a couple pieces of advice. The first thing to note is that, similar to Terrence Howard, he often uses scripture and random jargon out of context as a way to appear credible and well-studied. And funny enough, ironically, Rogan actually described the problem without even knowing it.
Well, there's a lot of dudes, unfortunately, who just get on YouTube and they listen to very charismatic people talk that don't know what they're talking about, which I do all the time. But they do it in a way where they pretend they know something is true that's not true.
Yeah.
And people get sucked into it.
Ironic, isn't it?
Another reason why Christians shouldn't be bothered by what he's saying is because you have to remember that humans also accept or reject beliefs based off of emotional reasons. They aren't always intellectual. In watching his interviews, I came across a clip that might be able to help explain why Billy seems to be particularly focused on refuting the Bible. In this clip, he talks about a traumatic experience that followed from what he believed to be his second encounter with aliens.
I had a second experience in 2010, which is well documented. I've talked about it. It took years to come out about it because I basically lost my whole family over this. And, man, hold on.
Whoa.
Sorry.
No.
What do you have to break yourself, man?
No.
Lost my family, created a lot of dissension. I remember we were on the highway one day and my wife was driving at the time, my ex-wife, and she slammed on the brakes and, it was like, just get out of the car, because the kids were scared. And I was like, I'm sticking to my story. I'm not changing my story because this really happened to me. and they just didn't want to hear it. But her parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, so everything was of the devil.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's at least possible that one of the reasons for why he seems to be so set on going against the Bible is because following these experiences that he believed that he had, the religious people in his life said that it was of the devil and seemed to shun him for it. And I'm sure that there's a lot more to this story that he didn't mention here, but I wouldn't be shocked if this played a bigger role than we realize in his attacks on Christianity. All right, so what can we take away from all of this? Well, if you find yourself convinced by people like Billy and Terrence Howard, let me just say, I get it. In a world where so many of us are skeptical about systems and institutions, people are looking for answers, and people like Terrence Howard and Billy Carson, they do a good job of playing into that need. But in reality, they only seem to have the answers since they say a lot of things quickly and confidently. So if something you hear about Christianity bothers you, no matter who it's from, take the time to study it and hear responses to the claims before you come to conclusions. The internet is filled with bad information, and the popular influencer Sneeko is another example of this. He gave some new reasons for why he rejected Christianity in favor of Islam that also don't
wanna
hold up
find
under
out why.
investigation. So go ahead and click here to see what I mean, and I'll see you over there. For the last
Wow, what a video. Go subscribe to What Do You Mean, because this was well researched, well thought out, and it quickly describes that a ton of these people are just chatting gibberish, but they're doing it very confidently, so it makes you fall into the trap. You know them by the fruits, and the fruits in this case are wicked. This man is definitely wicked. People that have been commenting in my comment section down below about Thoth, he's right, Jesus was an alien and all of this stuff. It's crazy when you start to decipher things, you see how exactly it turns out. Subscribe, like the video, comment in the comment section. I want to hear from you. What do you think about this? And link in the description is for you. God